The Blues, to me, represent an organization that exudes in not only developing but establishing and maintaining a culture of excellence. Ordinary people being placed in a high-stress environment and being able to understand what it takes to try to achieve perfection. So I grew up in a place called Royal Oak, Michigan, about 10 miles north of Detroit. One of the friends of my family, my father and mother, was a guy by the name of Mike Krichko. And Mike was a Bearcat pilot after World War II, or at the end of World War II. In my early age, at 10, 12 years old, that I would get magazines from Mike and read those naval aviation magazines, and that's where I really became interested in naval aviation. In my junior year of high school in Royal Oak, I applied to the Naval Academy. Had a difficult time getting a congressional appointment. And, like other things in my life, all of a sudden in my senior year, they reapportioned the state, and all of a sudden I got this congressional appointment and ended up at the Naval Academy. It was a tremendously difficult place to adjust to as a plebe. But what I learned to do was I learned to focus, and I learned to concentrate, and I learned how to set my goals and accomplish those goals. And obviously one of the takeaways was, how can I get into naval aviation? I graduated from the Naval Academy in 1967 and was immediately, I received orders to the Naval Aviation Training Command in Pensacola, Florida. And like the Naval Academy, that was kind of shocking, because what they tried to do in the Naval Aviation Training Command is reduce you to thinking like naval aviators. So right from the training, the pre-flight training through the propeller training in the small aircrafts, and then into the jet training, I was indoctrinated in how to fly for the Navy. And don't think about any of your other experiences, but this is how we want you to fly for the United States Navy. I was able to get my first choice, which was flying Phantoms, F4s at the time, the most high-performance airplane the Navy had. So I was very, very lucky to get orders to VF-121, which was the replacement air wing at the Naval Air Station Miramar. The training in the Phantom took a good year to not only become proficient in the airplane, but then also to do carrier qualifications. So it wasn't until the following year in 1970 that I received orders to VF-154. We had a lot of guys that coincidentally came out of VF-154 that ended up as Blue Angels. One of the first guys I met was Captain Ken Wallace. He had been not only a wingman on the Blue Angels, but then obviously a leader. Harley Hall was in VF-154. Don Bentley came out of 154, and then as luck would have it, I got to the Blues coming out of VF-154 as well. And we deployed to Vietnam in the October time frame of that year. So I flew north of 100 missions, and that old naval expression, hours and hours of boredom and a few moments of stark terror, probably described my career in the war. But it gave me an appreciation for what we were doing in Vietnam at that time, and the difficulty of executing and prosecuting the war, the air war in that campaign. Coming off of that first deployment, I was very fortunate to get selected. At the time it was called Top Gun, and then it became Navy Fighter Weapons School. All of my heroes were there: Dan Pedersen, Jerry Sawatsky, Jim Rulifson, Pete Pettigrew, Jimmy Lang. All of these guys that were the initial cadre of individuals that started Top Gun in 1969, they taught me how to fly and fight the airplane. So I really, my hat's off to them, and I remember them distinctly, and they're my heroes on how to fight and how to train and fight in the Phantom. And I think that helped mold me into the aviator that I was after attending Top Gun. I had to think ahead as to what I wanted to do when I completed my deployments and became eligible for shore duty. In the late part of the summer of '72, Harley Hall and Ernie Christensen, two of my heroes, and guys I really looked up to, they were in the same squadron. They were getting ready to deploy. And they had an interview. They said, anybody that was thinking about the Blue Angels, come over and meet Harley and Ernie. Ernie was the first full demonstration pilot with the team from the Naval Academy. J.D. Davis was narrator for 2 years. And I thought, well, what are my chances of getting in? They don't take guys from the Naval Academy. Met with Ernie and Harley, and that really influenced me tremendously to continue to pursue an application with the team. So Marlon Wida, Jerry Tucker, and John Fogg and myself were selected for the '73 team, which was kind of a high turnover rate after '72. And I came on board as the first number 7 narrator and advanced liaison officer to end up being selected for my first year as advanced liaison and narrator, and then for the next 2 years as a demonstration pilot. Now, it turned out that was probably the best thing that could happen to me, because going into an environment as demanding as the Blue Angels, it's tough enough to learn about the traditions, the legacy of the team when you first joined the Blues, let alone to have to immerse directly into a flying position, which is extremely difficult. It's probably the most difficult and the most focused that you need to be, most demanding of anything I've ever done in my life. So in hindsight, this position that I was now reporting to as the advanced liaison and narrator turned out to be a blessing in disguise, and made me not only understand the Blues better, understand the legacy of the Blues going back to 1946, the standards that they set, but allowed me then to perhaps set up for a very, very successful, in my opinion, successful second and third year on the team. I think, in my opinion, naval aviation is inherently dangerous. If you have a fighter that you're flying at 600 knots, it's a dangerous occupation. If you add another airplane, or 2 or 3 or 6 total airplanes in formation, the degree of difficulty and the danger goes up quite rapidly. If you take that whole formation and put it next to the ground at high speeds, then the degree of difficulty and the danger goes up asymptotically. Each year there's successes and failures in an organization, and because of the inherent danger that exists in the airshow environment, you can run across some problems. And so some problems were encountered, and we had to truncate in that year. We had to stop the demonstration season in the middle of the season. We really thought it was going to be the end of the Blues at that particular time. However, because we got some great support out of Washington, D.C., and some of the flag officers that knew us well, and the Secretary of the Navy, that didn't happen. We transitioned from a Navy flight demonstration team with an officer in charge to the Navy flight demonstration squadron, Blue Angels. And Commander Tony Less was appointed as the first commanding officer of the Blue Angels to lead us through this transition. I have never met a better leader and a better individual that was qualified to take us through this transition than Boss Less. We selected the A4, better thrust to weight than the Phantoms that we were flying, better wing loading so you could turn better, roll rates were higher, and it was a great airplane to transition into. I went from my position as advanced liaison number 7, I went to the left wing, to the number 3 position. So I was going to fly left wing for 1974 and then transition to the slot in 1975. We deployed as a squadron in late '73 out to Lemoore. We had our new team on board, and we trained in the A4. And then as the A4s were delivered, we trained in Pensacola, and then eventually transitioned to winter training in El Centro in January of '74 with the new airplanes. In '74, they brought Ken Wallace. I mentioned that Ken and I had known each other from VF 154, and Ken was Mr. Blue Angel, and they brought him on board to help Boss Les make that transition. Quite frankly, that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because Ken would fly one of the airplanes, I'd be on his left wing, and I'd go through a series of routines, a diamond roll, a loop, echelon roll, or whatever. And I've never met an individual that could fly an airplane like Ken Wallace, especially in an air show environment. Not only did he help teach me how to be a good demonstration pilot and a left wingman, but he also introduced us to a bunch of guys at the time. Bob Hoover used to come out and meet with us, Art Scholl, some of these legends of aviation that knew Ken, he brought out there and had a lasting impact on us for sure. My recollection of the first A4 air show is absolutely vivid in my mind. It was in April, and it was done for the Vice President of the United States, Jerry Ford. Now, the reason why I know this so well is that had a little incident happen when we got back to Pensacola from winter training. I was playing racquetball, and there was a little wet spot in the court. My foot went out from under me, and I took my left toe and I crashed it into the wall. Here, a week and a half from now, we're going to do the first air show of the season for the Vice President in Pensacola, and here I break my toe. And I told Mike Slumka, the doctor that I was playing racquetball with, he was an orthopedic surgeon, I said, you can't let anybody know about this. And he said, no, you don't understand, you're broken. You're not going to fly for a couple months. And I said, that's totally unacceptable. So he and I figured out a way that we could mend the toe without me being debilitated to the point I couldn't fly. So I had to go to the boss. I said, Boss Les, here's what happened. So why do I remember the first air show? Because I had to wear an extra large shoe on my left foot where the toe was frozen, was paralyzed. I couldn't do the walk down, so Boss would put me in the airplane, in the number 3 airplane, before the walk down. They do a 5-person walk down, and then magically, when they got into their airplanes, my canopy was open, and there's now all of a sudden 6 guys flying. Because I was flying the left wing, I was able to not experience any discomfort whatsoever. I was able to fly the airplane, and I used a lot of right rudder anyway, so the left foot wasn't affected. It didn't affect me at all, and so we didn't miss a beat. I don't think we had a problem that entire season. I don't think we touched airplanes. I don't think we so much as blew a tire. It was quite a remarkable season as far as that transition occurred. The transition from the 74 team to the 75 team was to me incredible. 1975 had the right chemistry and had the right people in the right place at the right time, and I was so fortunate to be a part of that. And then one of the most memorable shows was actually down in the South Bay area at Moffett Field, where we must have had must have been 3 or 4 million people that were stuck on 101 waiting for the air show to actually be completed before they started driving again. And you don't get a chance as slot pilot to see much except on the 6-plane cross, but I remember I was coming right across Route 101 to oppose the boss on the 6-plane cross, and saw all this traffic stacked up on the freeway as far as the eye could see. And so that was besides all the hundreds of thousands of people in Moffett Field itself. So that was a memorable event. Maintenance team is, you talk about professionals and talk about a culture of excellence and talk about people that are dedicated to their profession. I think the Blue Angel maintenance organization, which includes the C-130 pilots to support transporting them around, is second to none in the world. We as demonstration pilots were demanded that we have long hours and work hard and do a variety of things. But these folks, these couple hundred guys worked behind the scene, and the 100 or so that we took on the road were the best of the best ever. So the activities that they could perform, the feats that they could perform to make those airplanes fly on a regular basis was beyond my imagination. I think the other thing that I take away from the maintenance crew is the crew chief. My crew chief in particular for the 73 and 74, for the 74 and 75 season was T.P. Simons. And T.P. not only maintained my airplane, not only helped me as a pilot, but he took care of my family, he took care of me as a person. And he went on, I want to say, he was a crew chief. He went on and received a commission, and last time we saw each other at a reunion, he was a lieutenant commander, which I'm so proud of. The Blue Angels changed my life in a variety of ways. Number one, it made me realize that perfection, maybe not all the time, but part of the time is achievable. So you can set some objectives, some goals, and they're achievable. Maybe not perfection all the times, but there's certainly, you can get close to achieving those goals and doing them in a perfect manner. But I think what captured the spirit of that organization is Bill Hoverstadt, right wingman, and I talk periodically. And he said something to me that was very moving. He said, we may not have been the best aviators on that 75 team. We may not have, of all the Blue Angel, we may not have flown the best Diamond or the best Delta of all the Blue Angels that have ever flown from over the 75 years. But what we did do as an organization is each one of us tried as hard as we could every time we flew one of those airplanes. I think stretching from 1946 until the present day, over 76 years, there is a bond that develops between all of the people that have been involved with this organization. When you see the excellent job that the present teams are doing, the transitions that they've made to the F-18 over the last more than 30 years now, I believe, and the high standards that they demand of themselves, we can all appreciate. So there has been a camaraderie that'll never be forgotten when you run across the people that are on the team today or the people that were on the team before me or the interim folks. We all respect each other, and we all recognize that we tried to do our best to make that particular team, that particular year, the best there ever was.